TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the TruthSeekah podcast. Put on your handy dandy truth-seeking hats, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to get it in. We're about to talk all things spiritual. We're going to talk about music, sound, God, life, energy, the universe, all that good stuff. And got an awesome guest lined up for today. Excited about it. Been doing some really cool podcasts here lately. Last night I had the chance to talk with Jenny from Christ Alignment, which was a really interesting conversation. So I hope you guys listen to that one or go back and check it out as well in the archives. But that was a really good episode, and it goes deep with that one. That one goes deep, and that was a really good one to do. She almost didn't do it just because of all of the controversy that surrounds their name, especially when it comes to Christianity. But that was a blessing to have her on and talk to her. So, yep. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who is supporting my work via Patreon, all of the supporters. I could not do this without your help. This is a listener-funded show, and music, it doesn't work without you, and it doesn't work if you don't show up. And so I'm just grateful and thankful for all the people who have joined with the vision and what I'm bringing to the table through the music and through the podcasting. And that's just the beginning. The spiritual practices and the different things that we do together, and this whole community, which is changing lives, man, changing the world, at least changing our world to begin with, and then being sent out to be instruments out there to the rest of the world. So it's beautiful, and thank you guys for that. So if you'd like to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. You get access to my entire discography. I just looked at it. I've been saying 10 plus albums. I think it's like 14 albums now. I just lined them all up, and I'm trying to make it easy to download just to get all that music. It's 14 albums and a ton of collabs and features on other people's projects too. You get access to all that. Access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is our hangout community aspect to what we're building here. Our Discord as well, community Discord, where we hang out and we just do life together. I think that's a good way to put it on Discord. So if you're looking for community, you're looking to get involved, make sure you check out what we have over there on Patreon. Also, we just brought something new to the table, the Sunday morning online seer class. For those of you who are wanting to get into some of the breathing techniques, enter trance state. I know we talk about it a lot. We interview people, but this is just where we just go in together. It's definitely intention based. So we do that every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Central, and you can get access to that by becoming a patron at a particular level. So check that out, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest today. This is Scott Lawlor. Scott, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, my friend. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on the program.
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Excited to have you on. Excited to talk to you and talk about your journey. And I just want to start with the fact that how everything is connected and everything works together for our good, right? Like it was so cool how, I got an email from you because you checked out the interview that I did with Nancy Rynes, who had a NDE, near-death experience, and that her story inspired you to write an album entitled The Soul Journey, her
Yep.
NDE. And then so now you hit me up and you showed me your music, beautiful ambient meditation type music, etheric, beautiful stuff. And now you're on the podcast and we're going to talk about it. I just love how everything's connected, man. And so if I wouldn't have did that interview with her, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Everything's connected, man. It's so beautiful.
That's true. Everything is connected, and it's all a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's just start there, man. Well, let's start here. Let's just give a little background about who you are and what you bring to the table, and then we'll get into the NDE stuff and the music.
Okay. Well, I've been writing ambient music probably for the last 6 years or so. I've actually been interested in music all my life. When I was little, I used to play around with cassette recorders and record players and make all these weird sound collages and things like that. And I went off to college, got my degree in English and psychology because I wanted to be a novelist. But then when I got into graduate school, I picked up a synthesizer and started composing more new age music. This is back in 1991. And then I discovered that I put sounds together much better than words. So I abandoned the notion of being a novelist and just started touring around the Akron, Ohio area, playing at different coffee houses and things like that. And then I took like a 17-year break from music from around 1999 till 2013. Wait, that doesn't add up to 17 years. But anyway, it was a long break. It was a very long absence from music. And then I got another keyboard that I bought on Craigslist from a guy. And I submitted an old album that I recorded back in the 90s to an internet label back in 2013. And the guy liked it and released it. And then I just started releasing more material. And so I've been doing this for almost 6 years.
Is it more of a hobby, or have you turned it into a career where you're able to see some income and support yourself through it?
Well, I get some income from it. It certainly wouldn't be enough to support me financially if I was on my own. I'm a stay-at-home dad, so that gives me a bit of an opportunity to do more of this kind of thing. But yeah, it's mostly a hobby. But I make some money on it here and there.
It's beautiful music. You have a bunch of testimonies on the page as well. Music is powerful. And for those of you guys who are just listening on the podcast app, or you're just tuning in, Scott was born blind. So there's kind of I think it's a little bit different there when it comes to hearing sound, right? So I know you always hear the stuff that people who are blind or people who are deaf or mute or whatever, they usually work out the other senses a little bit better, and they're more sensitive to music and to sound and to be able to hear stuff. Does that go on as well? And whenever you hear music, do you hear it maybe a little bit more differently than other people?
Most of the time when I listen to music, I listen to it from a musician's perspective. So I'm usually always analyzing things, or more of an analytical mindset when I listen to things. So it's a little more, it's just more analytical.
Yeah.
When I listen to things.
I wonder.
But in terms of senses being more developed, that doesn't just happen naturally. That takes a lot of practice and a lot of work to get those senses to be more heightened. It's not like Daredevil where, oh gosh, you lost one sense. Ow, you got other senses going. But the media does a horrible job of portraying people with disabilities and stuff like that. And they do quite a disservice to people's perception of what we can or can't do and how we are, I think. Wouldn't you say?
I think so. And we're talking about it now. So yeah, we got to get this stuff out here. But definitely, man. As far as like your upbringing and stuff, and I read your bio, it talks about coming from like a religious upbringing that was kind of strict and nothing fun at all, and you kind of abandoned those ideas for a time. Do you want to talk a little bit about your upbringing and coming out of religion and those things?
Well, I grew up Catholic, and we went to church every Sunday. And I remember one time I was talking to my mom, and I was like, "Mom, I don't want to go to church." And she's like, "Well, if God can spend all of his time with us, then we can at least spend 1 hour a week with him." So it was more of that guilt, kind of thing, because her mom did the same thing to her. And so, that kind of goes on from one generation to another. We have a lot of that guilt and how you should or shouldn't do things. And, after I went to college, I grew up Catholic, but I went to college at a Southern Baptist university. So that was quite a switch. And I would have religious discussions with people about things in the Bible. I remember one time in particular, I was talking with somebody about the story of Jonah, and how Jonah was swallowed by the whale and all that kind of stuff. I was like, and I told the person, well, what does it mean for Jonah psychologically? What does it mean for him spiritually? And the only thing she said was, well, if the Bible says that Jonah was swallowed by a whale, then I believe it. So she just took it literally. And that always bothered me when people just take all that stuff just on the surface of what it means literally. They don't go any further to look into what else it could mean. And so I got pretty disillusioned by just a lot of religion after that. And when I was in grad school, I went back to a Catholic university, and I got into things like centering prayer and more into the New Age, kind of thing and stuff like that. And then I just left all that after a little while. And I guess my beliefs are now more, I guess I'm more of a deist. Deism is the idea that, there's a God, but, he just wound up the universe and let it run without intervention. Because I could never get my head around the whole personal relationship part of things.
That's where you are now, or that's what you came to think at that time?
That's how I came to think at that time, but I guess I'm still that way a little bit, but I'm a little bit in flux because, after my brother died and everything, that really turned everything upside down in terms of spirituality and, what to believe and stuff like that. And I'm still having a pretty difficult time with some of that kind of thing. That's partly why I wrote the album, because music is the way I express my inner thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. And I've written quite a number of albums based on just everything that's happened since then and those kind of things. And I don't feel like I'm doing so well on answering the questions, but
no, you're doing great, man. So I'm just trying to get a game plan if there was something that shifted, because a lot of people, they have these grandiose stories or whatever where something happened and then they became more conscious, they became more spiritual or whatever. Did something like that happen for you, or was it just like a slow shift of just like a natural process to where you are now?
Well, I think that, like I said, the death of my brother was a big part of why I started looking more into spirituality and like the whole thing with near-death experiences. I've been interested in those for a long time anyway, ever since I was in college. And, after that happened, I've wanted to answer the question is, is my brother okay now that he's gone? Because
Mm-hmm.
me and my brother were having a discussion about that. And he's like, well, we're never going to be the same. He's like, I just want to know that he's all right. And, after I heard, Nancy's story and have read some other near-death experience accounts and stuff like that, it just led me into trying to think more about those spiritual things.
It's kind of freaks yourself out, right? We all kind of like live like we're gonna live forever, and then we want to find out what happens, and we want to be okay with what happens. And even though we have all of these philosophies that give us hope or tell us what's going to happen, there's still that fear of the unknown, and that fear that you don't exist anymore, or whatever the case is. What was your conclusion, and what inspired the album? Because we hear stories like Nancy Rynes and other people who have had near-death experiences or pushed to the brink, and they have this otherworldly experience. Is it happening in their head? Did they really go to heaven and meet with those characters, with Jesus, with a creator, Christ, or whatever? What do you think happens whenever we cross? Do you think that they're literally having those encounters, or are they creating it in this fantasy world inside their head?
Well, I think those experiences are real. I've never been one to believe that after you die, nothing is left, because it just never made any sense to me that you're born here, live your life, and then when you die, that's it. There has to be something else out there. I've always believed that. Couldn't tell you what it is, but my intuition has always said that there is something beyond this life. So I've never, not even when I had issues with believing in things like the personal relationship aspect with God and stuff like that, I've always believed that there had to be something else out there after this.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense to live your life here and then that's it. I mean,
yeah,
there has to be something more out there. That's what I believe anyway.
Yeah. But let me ask you this though, because we're talking about God being personable. I believe that this God is personable, whether it's direct access to the Creator being one thing, or many different avenues. Like, you can speak to me through this way, you can see me through this tree, you can look at me through the smile of a child, or whatever. These different aspects, whether we get into prayer, meditation, or whatever, and it's just different aspects where we just get to maybe see a glimpse of God or the divine or whatever. So I definitely believe in that. But because I wanted to ask you that, just being inspired by Nancy Ryan's story, if you know what I'm saying, coming from a deist standpoint where God just kind of set everything up and lets it happen. He has no, interference with humanity, or, some people believe your prayer life, like you can affect things by prayer and stuff like that. But when you cross over, we're hearing these stories where once you cross it, that God or the angels or whatever definitely become more personable, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So what about, if one is a deist and that doesn't really believe that God is a personable God, what about the angels? What about the spirits and the other things that kind of operate within those different levels of dimensions and kingdoms and stuff? Do you believe in that? And have you had any encounters with any type of angelic beings or figures or anything like that?
I don't know if I've had encounters with angelic beings, but I remember when I wrote my album Transition, which was written a couple of days after I returned from my brother's funeral and all that, that album talks about how there was one particular track where I was sitting by my brother's bedside. He was in hospice, and so there was a hospital bed in the living room, and I was just sitting there holding his hand, and I felt this presence because there was no one else in the room. I didn't know what the presence was, but I felt this presence only for a moment. And I don't know what that was, but I remember my mom said, a couple of days earlier, she was with my brother just, sitting with him. And she started hearing these muffled voices, and she thought maybe the TV was on in the other room, but there was no TV going. And so she thought that it was the angels telling her that they were ready for him to come home.
Wow.
So, my mom is pretty religious and all that. We used to have really deep conversations about those kinds of things a while ago. But that's hard to do when you're like in Texas and she's in Florida. So,
yeah,
we don't see each other as much as we probably should. But hopefully I can change that and get to see them more.
Yeah, there's something precious about those conversations, especially with family members. And I think it's so precious to me that I started a podcast where we can come on here and have these discussions, and talk about those experiences and what if and stuff like that, just understanding that. I mean, I have some truth. I have things that I, believe that are kind of like my foundation or whatever. But I think everybody has a piece of the puzzle, man, and everybody has these different experiences. And I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle of it all, right?
Absolutely.
So you said you picked up a synthesizer in college and started messing with the music. As far as on a musician standpoint and audio engineer standpoint, are you using any particular programs to make your music and things like that? Or are you just using keyboards, or how does that work for you?
Well, mostly I use just my synthesizer. It's hooked up to my computer by USB, and I use things like SoundForge and Audacity, and I use a lot of different plugins to create different effects and things like that, and do my mixing. It's a pretty simple setup. I don't use like a multi-track DAW like Reaper or Cakewalk or Logic or anything like that. I have a really simple, easy setup. It just allows me to create things because I'm not very technical. I'm an artist, not a computer programmer.
Yeah.
So I'd rather spend my time working on the music side of it rather than figuring out a whole bunch of technical things.
Now, how does that work for you, not being able to see? How were you able to learn? Maybe it's through the shortcuts. Do you have somebody there with you who can tell you what shortcuts to push on a keyboard and things like that? How does that actually work for you?
I've got speech software on the computer that reads everything that's on the screen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there are a couple of different programs that do that on the computer, and even the mobile phones have that technology. iOS has voiceover. The Androids have, I don't know what they use, but they have speech also. So yeah, there are a lot of other blind people I know who work in music and stuff like that. And I've collaborated with a lot of different people from all over the world. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Technology is something else, man, when we can use it to our advantage and then connect, and even like what we're doing right now, just broadcasting this podcast, this conversation all over the world right now. And whoever wants to tune in, they can pick up their smartphone or their computer and hang out with us for a little while, right? This is so cool.
They just hang out and chill.
Yeah. So are you using Contact at all? The Contact plugin?
Contact, that is part of
Native Instruments is a big part of that.
Complete, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I know a lot of people who use Complete with Contact because Complete actually has voiceover support now. But I'm a little nervous about getting into the whole idea of doing everything inside the box, like using virtual instruments and all that. I'm just a little bit nervous about how all that would work.
What does that mean?
Well, I guess it means I wonder how big the learning curve for that would be and how long it would take me to figure that stuff out so I can just keep working on new music.
Yeah, because I'm listening to it and I'm hearing some sounds in your stuff and I'm like, is he using Contact? Because I actually just found out about that plugin, and I use FL Studio, and
Okay.
use Nexus. I don't know if you use Nexus at all, but Nexus is pretty cool. And you can get all these people chanting, and you play the keys and the root notes of how you want them to chant. It gets pretty deep, and I felt like I heard some voices in there a little bit in some of your mixes and stuff too. That was really cool. That reminded me of Context. I just wanted to know, like, on a technical end.
Oh yeah, Contact has a crazy amount of instruments. There's a lot of instruments in Contact. I don't know how many thousands and thousands of different plugins and instruments you can have in there, but it's almost unlimited.
We got a couple questions coming here in the chat, and I was kind of wanting to know this a little bit too. Do you put intention into the music, and do you believe that that's a thing? Obviously, you can play certain music that makes you feel a certain type of way. Just listening to your music makes me want to relax and start meditating. Just when I hear it, it can induce trance state if you close your eyes and just go on that journey through the music, right? You can make sad music, happy music, or whatever, and you can make someone feel a certain type of way just by listening to the music. Now, do you put intentions and frequencies into your stuff? Do you do anything like that?
Not for meditation, but I've heard a lot of people say that my stuff would be good for meditation, but I've also heard people say that some of my stuff would be good for horror movies. So it probably just depend on what you're listening to. But in terms of is there a purpose to my music? Yeah, absolutely. I try to write pretty comprehensive liner notes for a lot of my albums. And, I don't just hit random notes to play, drones and stuff like that. I have a pretty, what's the word I want to use? I don't know, but I have a lot of intentionality in what I want to say when I write something new.
Yeah, and you get to communicate it through the music. That's awesome. Now you talk about horror films and stuff like that. Are you a fan of horror films or horror music from the 80s or early 90s or anything like that? Because that music is just a whole nother realm and genre in itself.
Actually, no, but I scare pretty easily too. I freak myself out. I'll be sitting over here at night, and then my imagination will go wandering off, and I'll just scare the hell out of myself. But no, I don't really get into horror movies. A lot of horror, the movies are so visual anyway. It's hard for me to follow them.
What about the music? What about some of the music, like John Carpenter and stuff like that? He just went on tour. I wish I could have went, man. He went on tour playing a lot of that, music from all those movies that he worked on. That would have been cool.
He did the Halloween movies, didn't he?
He did a bunch of them. The John Carpenter, I think he did some vampire movies. I want to say he did Hellraiser, but there's a bunch that he maybe even The Exorcist. Like, he did a lot of music for those iconic horror movies.
Yeah, I may have heard some of his music, but I haven't really sought out the actual soundtracks, but I'll have to do that.
Yeah, it's just a different feel, and I think a lot of it's coming back. A lot of the 80s stuff, if we, like the show Stranger Things and the soundtrack for that, it's got that synth pop is what they call it. And I've been trying to incorporate a little bit of that into my beats and stuff like that, just bringing back that weird synthesizer, 80s feel,
Yep.
Now, when you said you got you a synthesizer back in the day, was it an analog? Because some people are diehard when we're talking about synthesizers. Some you just plug and play and it's all electronic. But some of them, there's analogs where you get to create the sound as you go. Did you mess with that at all?
No, the first synthesizer I had was actually the Ensoniq SQ1. And it was self-contained. I think it only had like 160 sounds on it, maybe. But that keyboard lasted me for quite a long time. I made quite a bit of music on that board before I gave it to a friend of mine before I left wherever I was at the time. It was in Florida when I left my music for a while. But I did also have a Yamaha AN1X, which was a little bit analog. That came out in 1997, I think it was. I think that was one of those virtual analog machines. But yeah, I've heard of people who do the whole analog thing and all the patch cords and and all that kind of stuff. And man, that'd be crazy for me to try to figure that
I
out.
know, right? I guess you had to back then, though, right? And then, like in the early
Oh
days.
yeah,
I
like
guess
back in the
that's
70s, early
yeah.
80s. Yeah.
It's interesting. Now, let me ask you this because I don't know how much you know about it, but if anyone was to speak on it, I think you could. They say that there's a different sound from CD and digital stuff that we have now, and different frequencies that you can't hear or pick up in an MP3 or something recorded now digitally versus a record from the 70s or whatever the case is. Are you able to tell those subtle differences, or do you think that what we have now is so sophisticated with like you can do it in like surround sound and put instruments that makes it sound around you? There's so much you can do now. Have you looked into that or heard those arguments at all?
There's a certain warmth that comes with analog that I don't think you can get with digital. In some senses, I think maybe the digital production is a little bit clinical, maybe a little bit colder, and it's lacking some of the warmth and humanity that you could pick up on, not necessarily here, but you get the vibe that there's something extra when you listen to something that's all analog. There's a certain warmth to that, I think.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a frequency. There's definitely some crackling that you hear when you're listening to a record now. And I wonder if it's still in it though, like cause like there's like a resurgence of those records coming back out, and a lot of people are uh, stocking up their record collection. But I wonder if it was just the way that it was recorded, because now we're still recording this stuff, what I'm saying, digitally, and then converting it to the record. So I wonder if there's some of that frequency is lost there as well.
Well, I know that there are certain plugins that you can use that can add that crackle, that little vinyl crackle sound to the music. It's obviously not the same as if you had a record, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, that was done a lot in hip hop. a lot of hip hop music where they start off the sound with the little record popping.
Yeah, I've done
like
that with some of my recordings.
Now, whenever you start an album or a song, do you? I guess an album. So does the album go into like when you go into the writing process? Do you go in with that intention, like this album is I'm gonna do 4 songs dedicated to Nancy Rynes and her story. I'm gonna do 4 songs dedicated just to this, and almost like this could be the soundtrack for them and for that whole experience that you've encountered. Is that how that works for you as far as an album, or is it song by song?
Sometimes it works out that way where I know what I want to write about beforehand. A lot of times, though, I'll write the music, and while I'm listening to the playback of it, I get the idea for what I want the music to represent.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case with Soul Journey, let me think about that, because that was a while ago. That was back in October. I think that's one of the albums where my intention was to write about that before I started writing the music, if I remember right. Yeah, sometimes I have an idea of what I want to write about before I sit down and improvise, and sometimes I don't. And the idea for the story comes after I've written the music.
Well, it it looks like you're starting to put out some stuff really quick too. You have like several releases that just came out, right?
Yeah, I just had a piano CD come out a couple of weeks ago called "The Color of Extraordinary," which has a couple of reviews. I've put out something new in my drone excursion series. I think that's up to 26 now. But yeah, I release a pretty good amount of stuff, and people usually ask me, how do you do that? And my answer to that usually is, well, I stay up later than everyone else, and I drink more coffee than most people in the house. So, so
Yeah, you got to work when others are sleeping, whether it's at night or in the morning.
well, I'm a night owl anyway, so I tend to work better at night.
Have you looked into any of the work from what's his name, Eric Dollard, who's, I guess you would say, I don't know if he's a physicist or whatever, but anyway, he talks a lot about the early churches, how they were shaped a certain way where you would hear the organs playing and the music, and even some of the early Catholic stuff with the Gregorian chants, that the music was used and would resonate through the buildings, even in the churches, to create a trance-like state or mystical euphoric experience just by listening to the music. Have you listened to any stuff on that when it comes to like the early religious stuff and the ways that the buildings were shaped and stuff?
No, I'm not real familiar with that, but I know that a lot of the pipe organs that are in these churches, they actually build the cathedral around the pipe organ, so it's actually a part of the building.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but Eric, what did you say his name was?
Dolan? Eric Dollard. I had him on my show some years ago, and he got really deep on that stuff, and it was pretty good. So it's very interesting.
Can you email me what podcast that was? I want to check that out.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, the audio is really bad. It was in the early days, and he's
oh, that's okay.
He's a technician, but it's his microphone or telephone was so bad. But if you can listen, that it's one of the beautiful things about it is that like the audio is so bad, but if you can put up with it, there's so much information in that episode. It's just so beautiful,
Yeah, I'll check that out.
It's kind of like the price to pay to make it happen. So when it comes to like the music and the vibration and stuff, especially in the spiritual community, there's a lot of talk about the 432 frequency. Have you done any study of that? Do you try to tune to that when you play?
I don't really know how to tune to that frequency, but I've heard a lot of people use that frequency, and they say that it works pretty well, but I don't know very much about how to do that.
Yeah, you can. There's ways that you can do, and it's in the A. It's usually in the A concert pitch, right? You're playing in A, and it tunes everything to 432A. And you can get one of the easiest programs that does it for free is Audacity, where you can just bring any song in there and tune it to A, and it brings it up to that scale with the 432. And there's a feeling that does come along with it. Like you can listen to any popular song on the radio, and a lot of people are redoing that. A lot of people are taking their favorite songs and tuning them to that 432 pitch and uploading them to YouTube. There's also apps that they've developed where you can download on your phone, and your song will the app will automatically play your song that you're listening to on your phone in the 432 concert pitch as well. It's very interesting, but there is a feeling that comes along with it, like these different notes and things that make you feel a certain type of way. Like if you want to, transmute the sad emotions or sad feelings, obviously there's different notes that you can play in combinations of chords together that's going to make you feel that certain type of way. And the same thing if you're trying to, feel uplifted or even spiritual or whatever the case is, you can make that happen too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out because I use Audacity a pretty good bit.
Let's see. This is what somebody's talking about in the chat. I want to try to bring this up. I don't know if you had any encounter. Have you had any encounters with psychedelics at all? Some people's talking about when it comes to sound. Chris Garner says on shrooms, I sense it's like a feeling harmonic rather than it being audible, but I don't think it's similar. talk about being able to feel the music. That's one thing that when people talk about doing magic mushrooms or psilocybin or something like that, that they move into this state where they can actually feel the music versus hearing it, and in the feeling the notes that are being played, but also the intention as well. Have you had any encounters with psychedelics when it comes to that?
Actually, I haven't, but I've had a couple of friends of mine say that my music takes on a whole different dimension when they listen to it under the influence. And my brother used to say, man, I listen to your music and man, are you on drugs when you write this? And I'm like, no, I am not on any kind of drugs when I write any of this stuff. It just all comes from my mind. So I don't take any psychedelics or anything. Although I thought about it periodically, but I worry about things like flashbacks and stuff like that, which is one of the big reasons why I never tried anything like, acid or whatever. Because I've always read about people having flashbacks under duress and under stress and stuff like that. And so that's always prevented me from trying that, just because I don't want to take the risk of having that kind of thing happen. Yeah,
that's a big fear that a lot of people have to get over before they still do it. But it's a good fear, Yeah, there's a such thing as a healthy fear. It's a fear for a reason. It's a phobia that people have to get over for a reason. Yeah, it's an exchange. Like, okay, I'm gonna try it. But you have a lot of stuff that looks like it's about the astrals, about space, and I know that kind of comes with the the type of music that you're doing. That's real, ambient and stuff, and it's dealing with space now. We're talking about intention. Like, there's certain music that you can play that can help induce trance states. We're talking about this, these churches that are playing the different music, and even like every Sunday morning when you're clapping, the drums are being played. Like, music is so powerful; it has the ability to put you in those states. Do you experience that through your music? Is that an intention that you put, that if people want to, they can do that? Or is it just kind of like, because there's a lot of different imagery that's used here with space, and even one of them, one of the albums you just put out, it's called Defining Gravity for Beginners, and there's just a bunch of stuff about, the ether and stuff like that. Is that something that you have had experience with, or you want to create a space for people to experience?
Well, if I was sighted, one of the things that I would probably do would be to do a lot of stargazing, because I've always been fascinated with outer space and the planets and things that are beyond the galaxy and all that. So a lot of my stuff is inspired by astronomical phenomena. But in terms of whether my intention is to allow someone to feel something like that, I guess usually my thought is I'm going to write about what I feel, and people are going to use it to go on whatever journey they feel it will take them on.
Yeah, it's powerful, and then, like, when you're having these inspirations, whether it's Nancy Rynes' story, like, music can create a portal for people to experience those realms, and I'm finding the same thing. Which I have a lot of lyrics in my music, so it's a little bit different as far as like I'm I'm doing the hip hop, so there is an intention there. But it's so interesting where people are able to listen to the music and kind of go on that journey with you, and it is intention based to create a spiritual experience, and it goes forth and it does that. It's pretty powerful. Yeah. Is your music on iTunes?
Actually, yeah. It's some of it's on iTunes, and it's also on Amazon and Spotify. Not all of it, but some of it is. The really long albums, like the Drone Excursions and my collaborations, those are all only on Bandcamp. But the albums that have a lot of shorter tracks are on Amazon and iTunes and stuff like that.
Awesome. And you can look it up by just typing in Scott Lawlor, Lawlor.
Yeah, if you would like, I can try to get those links together for you and send those to you so that you can put them in the show notes.
Yeah, I definitely have your Bandcamp link as well on here now. I have it pulled up. So
Yeah, but I can get you I'll try to get you the Amazon and
okay,
iTunes.
yeah. If you want to send me all the links over, that'd be cool. We'll put them in the show notes for people to check out.
Okay, I can do that.
Now, what about? I know this is softer music. It's more ambient. It's beautiful music. Now, what about? You know what I'm saying, like darker music, like heavy metal or rock and roll. Do you get into any of that at all?
I like to listen to stuff like that. I don't really write a lot of stuff like that, although I did do a couple of albums where I covered the early music of Pink Floyd.
Oh, wow.
And so that was pretty interesting. But I find that
there's a lot of songs on here, man.
Yeah, a lot of albums. The albums that cover the Pink Floyd material. Gosh, I'm not right at my computer, so I can't tell you right off the top of my head what those are.
Do you know the name of it?
Well, one of them is called "The Dark Descent and Up to Reascend," which came out earlier. I think that came out in like 2015, maybe. So
okay.
That's pretty well down the page. But I find that the music that seems to be the most popular is stuff that is more improvisational and not stuff that I spend a lot of time mixing and layering.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems that I have more of an appeal for the stuff that's just improvised right off the top of my head, probably because maybe it's more meaningful. Because once you get into doing a lot, well, at least in my case, when I get into creating a lot of layers and doing all this mixing, I wonder if it loses some of the meaning and the humanity to it. If that makes, I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Yeah, you know, I'm real big on that. Like, I know what's good on my vocals. You know, you can definitely overproduce it.
Yeah,
and you can underproduce it as well. You know.
Yeah.
There's sometimes I hear hip hop music or whatever, and they're just like one vocal take straight through, and it's good or whatever. But I like to layer my stuff and put little Easter eggs and ambiances and whispers in the background. And it's so funny, we're talking about psychedelics and stuff. I've listened to some stuff that, like, I don't know if it's the mushrooms doing it or if it's really there, but you can hear different layers that sound like they're recorded in the music that you couldn't hear without it. And it's like, is there really a track of this lady singing and she's whispering it to me? Because it definitely sounds like you can hear it when you're on, you know what I'm saying, that level. But I like to actually put that stuff in my music, and people who have an ear for it, they can hear, the different panning this 45 right, 45 left, and this is in the middle, and all of this stuff that's really, it makes it sound like it's in stereo, and it just creates this whole atmosphere. So there's a beauty in the blueprint, and it's somewhere in the middle, as always.
Yep. Sometimes adding those little subtle effects here and there can make a huge difference in the perception that person has about the music. Like, there's one album I have with Metadronos. I've got this song called "The Art of Cutting," which it's done with nothing but voicemails from a friend of mine. I didn't use any synthesizers or anything on that album. And this particular track, it's a pretty dark track where she was talking about how she used to cut herself, and she was in different mental institutions and pain clinics and stuff like that. And so I just took all these voicemails with her permission, obviously, and created this really creepy, dark ambient drone track that actually has, you can understand what she's saying with the vocals, but I also made them so that it sounds like this weird whispering in the background as if you could hear all the little different voices that were inside her head telling her to cut herself and stuff like that. So it was pretty creepy.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense, man.
I'll send you the link to that album. It's pretty interesting.
You have one here. You have one here the title of the album, and the song titles are a bit strange. But anyway, this album is entitled "Religious Extremists Facilitate Annihilation of an Otherwise Cultured and Orderly Society," and each track is about or inspired by religious extremism. The cult of Islamic extremists is a blemish on the face of humanity is the name of the first track, and it just goes down. It seems like it's a sentence or a paragraph, and each song just is a piece of that paragraph. What is this, man?
For a little while, I got into some socio-political protest albums and stuff like that, and that was just a phase I was in for a while. Luckily, probably for a good thing for a lot of people, that I'm not doing that kind of stuff anymore, because
me too.
I just had to get that out of my system, because you go through phases in your career, and I think that was probably a pretty dark time for me, actually, when I was doing some of the more politically.
Were you listening to documentaries
or
just listening to the news? I mean, what inspired that realm that kind of have you in that state of mind?
I think it was just listening to the news and all that kind of stuff, which I don't do so much anymore, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Actually, these days, because the news and stuff is it's just too much now. But I had succumbed to the trap of getting involved with listening to the media and all the different news broadcasts and things that were going on and stuff like that. And my response to things like they usually are is to just write music about whatever it is.
Yeah. So
that phase is luckily behind me. I don't intend to do any more of the socio-political kind of things, because I think that kind of thing can also be a little bit alienating.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and
religion and politics, man.
I don't care if it's alienating or not, because I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Yep.
But then I was like, what does that really serve? How does that really serve people taking up the political mantle of protesting and stuff like that? So I just don't do that anymore. So that's behind me.
I had a streak of that. It's usually when you first wake up to the fact that this stuff exists, and you're like, "What? This exists in the world?" And you're seeing it everywhere, and you listening to it, you see it, you're like, and if you're an artist, if you're a painter, it's gonna come out in your paintings. If you're a rapper, it's gonna come out in your lyrics. And if you're one who just creates music, you're gonna be inspired to do something about it or whatever, and you want to tell people, hey, this is going on, and you don't know. I mean, in any facet, whether you become a Christian or a religious zealot or whatever, you want to tell everybody. You're just finding out about it, and a lot of people go through that. Like you said, though, it can be alienating. That's the bad thing about it. You can burn bridges and burn friendships because you desire to tell the truth or let people know something that is important to you because it's brand new. It's brand new to you. You just found out about it. And a lot of people go through that and burn bridges and relationships because of it too.
Yeah, I think that the intention isn't to burn bridges and shatter relationships, but that can happen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the byproducts of doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what they say about religion and politics, man. And then when we're doing both of them, religion and politics.
Yeah, but there are ways to talk about those and still be civil.
Yeah, and have a civil conversation and not feel like you're the only one who is right. That's a big one.
Yeah, or feeling like you either have to go on the attack because you're right, or feel that you're being attacked because you're being challenged.
Yeah.
So. But see, a lot of people I just don't talk, especially politics. I don't talk politics with a lot of people anymore. Now, religion's a different thing. I'll do that, but the political things I try not to. really engage in that as much. I'm not always successful. I'm human. I'll stray into that sometimes, but
Yeah, I know. I'm the same
when
way.
I
I try to
do,
be conscious not to.
yeah, but it'll still happen because we're all human and we can just do the best we can.
So you talking about coming out of religion or whatever, or just coming from a religious background, strict religious background, didn't really want to be there, but you're still inspired by those stories. Especially you're talking about maybe even being into maybe the allegory of the stories now and the deeper meaning that is hidden within them stories, especially when you're talking about Jonah and the whale, and they're like, nope, if the Bible says it, I believe it. Jonah, a literal man named Jonah got ate by a whale and lived to tell about it, versus,
Yeah.
okay, this is talking about when I'm going through hardships and I'm in a situation where it looks like I have no way out. How do I get out of these situations? Well, call upon God, my higher power, trust my intuition. I mean, all those stories are actually full of that stuff. And then the power is in the allegory, because I'm seeing here you have an album called Radiance of the Light, and it looks like it's inspired by the birth of Christ, or even the one of the songs here is I love I love both of these names really. The opening of the prison to them that are bound is one, and the other one is Splendor of Eternal Light. Like, so it's still like an inspiration of the essence of those stories you're getting inspired from, right?
Yeah, back in December, I released 4 albums around the themes of Advent, because I've always been inspired by the Advent stories and even the Easter stories. I've got a set called Desert Nocturnes, Ambient Excursions for the Season of Lent, which is an album that I wrote back in 2016, where I wrote one song for each day of Lent for that year.
Oh, wow.
And near the end, I was running out of ideas. So good thing it only went for 40 days. I was like, I don't know if I can finish this or not.
So there's 40. Is there 40 tracks on that album?
Well, the original album had all 40 tracks on one album, and then like a year or maybe 2 years later, it was 2 years later, back in 2018, I remastered all 40 tracks and released it as an 8-volume set, because I felt it was probably more manageable for people to get 5 tracks on one album as opposed to a whole album of 40 tracks, which equaled about 24 hours of music.
Yeah.
So that was a marketing error on my part when I first released that, but I wanted to remaster them anyway a little bit. So now it's 8 albums with each album having 5 tracks.
That's cool. You got a big body of work, man, and so there's a lot of people who want to get started at doing something like that, whether it's working on music or creating a website or starting their own business or whatever their hobby is and turning it into a full-time business or something, getting paid to do what they love for a living. They don't know where to start, and it's just doing, just taking it one day at a time, man. Start with your first song and be consistent, right? Because you can look back, you got a huge catalog. I do too, but it has to start with that first note, that first song, right?
One thing that I did that might actually help other people who want to be musicians is I didn't just create a Bandcamp page and start uploading my stuff right away. My Bandcamp page didn't actually come into existence until like 2015. But it might look like I've had stuff on there earlier, because I've got the original release dates of the earlier albums on there. So I've got stuff that was from 2013 and 2014. They weren't uploaded to Bandcamp until like 2015, but I put the actual release date on the album. But what I started doing to start out with was submitting things to different compilations on other internet labels, and I felt by doing that it was a good way to start out trying to get a broader audience, because more people are probably going to listen to a various artist compilation than some dude they'd never heard of.
Yep.
And so I started submitting to a lot of different compilations, and I've taken actually all those tracks from different compilations, and I've got this set of compilation sets that I'm releasing over time that take all the tracks from a certain year that I submitted to compilations in that year, and I have them in one album, and it also includes bonus material that was recorded in that same year.
Yeah.
So I've got two of those now. I've got the Year of the Snake from 2013. I think it's 2014 was the Year of the Goat, maybe. I think I was trying to go by the Chinese Zodiac. So I've got like 3 more to release because I'm not doing compilations anymore. Just because I got so much other stuff I'm doing with collaborating and those kinds of things.
Now, when you do a collaboration, what would you do? Like, as far as in the music, do you just do a couple layers and maybe some, as far as like, I guess rhythm is concerned, if it was looked at that, and then somebody else comes and plays like some lead piano over it or something like that, or guitar? How does that work with you when you do a collab like that?
Well, usually what I'll do is I'll create a layer of something, usually a drone layer of some sort, and I'll send it to the collaborator that I want to work with, using WeTransfer usually, although sometimes I use Dropbox.
Yeah.
And then that person will mix something into what I recorded, and they'll send it back to me. And I might even add something additional on top of that and send it back to them. And we just keep going that way back and forth until we're both happy with the album. And then I'll release it.
Yeah, we do that with hip hop, right? So that's what I do. I do like spiritual, esoteric hip hop and stuff. So I'm able to work with people all over the world essentially by sending them an email with the MP3 in it. They download it, record their vocals, send it back to me, send me the stems, and let me mix it down, throw my effects on it, and mix and master it the way I want. And it's just it's so cool. The power of the internet again, and then the power of just simply networking. Because like you said, now you're tapping into a fan base of however many people they have. They may have 7 fans. They may have 70,000 fans. It's different. But each time you're putting yourself in front of people who, would have never been able to find you. And that's kind of how I've built my music, working with people. And even I've had to pay people. Like, hey, you're a big name. Here's $200. Let's do this feature. And now I have an audience because their audience is waiting for new material from that guy. And then you kind of go on the song with them and they're like, who is this? And they want to know more. And you just put it in front of them. So just the power of networking with the music that I've done and the podcast and stuff like that. And that's just the name of the game for me, man, especially with using the internet. You know what I'm saying? The world is at your fingertips, really, right?
Yep, that's how I do it. Now that's an example of using the internet in a positive way, collaborating with other people and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. The internet has really made us a global community in some senses.
We do have a question from John Santiago here, good friend of mine in the chat. His question, he says he's curious about how you view life, shapes, people, animals, etc. Was he completely blind from birth? How does he visualize the world?
Well, hi, John. Yes, I was born blind. I was actually born 3 months premature. And so the reason I'm blind is because they gave me too much oxygen, which damaged the optic nerves. So how do I view the world? Well, mostly by listening, and feeling, and hearing and touch, those kinds of things. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah. Well, I'm just being conscious a while ago because honestly, I didn't know you were blind when we did when we were setting up the interview.
Yeah.
And I noticed, and you told me, I just noticed the way you were holding the camera and just where you were looking, and you were navigating through your house pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I told you to turn the phone sideways, and I said like a rectangle. Does that? How does that come across? Because as far he said shapes, you know what I'm saying. A rectangle is a shape. Did you know what I was saying when I would say that? Do you learn? Does someone explain what that shape would look like? How does that work as well?
Well, that's just a matter of coming in contact with the shapes. Just enough, but when you said turn the phone like a rectangle, I assume you meant turn it like sideways.
Yeah.
That the rectangle is the long ways, not
Yeah.
the
I know, right?
not
Because
vertical.
it's a rectangle either way you turn it.
Yep. Yeah. But no, just like, anyone else who's learning about their world and exploring, it's the same thing, but just without the one component of vision or physical sight, I should say.
Yeah. Even though it's some type of disability, you've been able to live a full life. You've went to college. Are you have children, correct?
Yep. 3 kids.
3 kids, married?
Yep.
Married with kids, 3
Stay-at-home
children.
dad.
Stay-at-home dad, gets to do what he loves for a living. That's awesome,
Yep.
man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Do you try to reach out to any other people like in that community? Is there other, I know there's online communities for everything, right? For every niche or whatever. Is there like a blind community that are into music, or just a blind community that you're a part of at all?
There is a blind community in general, and I have collaborated with some people who are visually impaired in music, a little bit here and there. But in terms of any local community like that, I'm not aware of one. But this is a pretty small little town in Texas. It's more of a little bedroom community. And Denton, which is right across the way, is a college community, so they probably have more of a diverse population than we would have here.
Now, are you still actually getting out to go do live shows and stuff, or was that just something in college that you did a lot of?
Oh no, I haven't done a live show in years and years. That was only when I was in Ohio. I would play coffee shops. I remember one coffee shop I played at. The proprietor paid me in coffee beans. I was like, man,
the barter system.
I'll take any kind of payment. So I got like 9 pounds of coffee for that one gig. It's pretty cool. Pretty good deal.
Heck yeah. Some people would love that, man.
Yep.
Let's see. So there's another question here from Renitha, who, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but she's asked, do you experience spiritual things in a more heightened senses of awareness, I guess?
Probably not. I wouldn't think so, because spiritual experiences wouldn't be dependent on what lack of a physical sense you have. I wouldn't think anyway.
Well, I think we talked about at the beginning just a little bit, like the different preconceived notions that people have, that and I've seen documentaries of, like, blind kids riding their bike, and they're able to make clicking sounds and ride their bike anywhere they want, because they're able to kind of feel the vibration that almost like a bat would do, and be able to, navigate by doing that. I don't know if you've heard about that, but people have that preconceived notion that if one of your senses is dulled or you lose it, then you get better at operating, or either you're more sensitive to the other ones. And I think a lot of people believe that, but you're saying that's not quite true, right? Because if we're talking about spirituality, I think a lot of people would think about ESP, the extrasensory perception, that you will get just a little bit more sensibility when it comes to the other ones, because you lack sight or whatever. Being able to get those chill bumps, feel when something's present or whatever the case is, feel the intention of music. So there's no extra, lenience upon that, right? It's just kind of normal like everyone else.
Yeah, it's normal like everyone else. And those documentaries where they talk about people who can ride bicycles and do the clicking thing, I think that's an exception, because I don't know anyone who can do that myself.
Yeah.
And I think the danger in creating those kinds of documentaries is it makes that kind of a thing look or appear more mainstream and more prevalent than it really is.
Like you were talking about Daredevil earlier too, right?
Uh-huh.
Before we went live,
Yeah.
Watching something like that. And I think, those things, we watch those and we're like, yeah, you can hear better than us or whatever. But you don't think that's the case at all, huh?
No, I don't think so.
That's interesting. That pops a lot of paradigms for a lot of people because we definitely have been led to believe that from television,
Yeah. Well, paradigm popping is a good thing because it gets you out of your comfort zone and it makes you consider things a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's always a good thing.
So yeah, I appreciate you coming on, hanging out with me, man. If you have a direct link that you wanted to send somebody to, and we'll put all the other links in the show notes, but is there a website or something that you'd like people to go check out your stuff at?
Probably just my Bandcamp. That's http colon backslash, or no, however that is.
Backslash colon, yeah.
Backslash. It's Scott Lawlor. That's SCOTTLAWLOR.bandcamp. That's BANDCAMP.com. And I've got links there. I've got a YouTube channel, so I've got a link to that. And I've got a link to my Twitter. Now, I don't have like iTunes and Amazon and all that stuff linked up there yet. I probably should put that on there, but I don't have it on there yet. But I'll send you those links for the show notes.
For sure, man. Do you do a lot of interviews?
I try to, yeah. I did a couple of interviews last year, and one guy I interviewed with last May, he wants to do a follow-up interview with me probably in May again. So yeah, I do some interviews sometimes.
Have you thought about going live and just playing live like you would a show, like going live on Facebook or YouTube or anything like that for the audience? That'd be dope.
Well, I don't have a webcam, and I'm not sure what software. Isn't there a software called? Is it called Outbox or some
OBS?
Something like that?
That's what I use. OBS.
Yeah, that's what I heard about. I don't know how accessible all that stuff is, but
well, you could do it. You could do it just through your phone as well now. So they have it. They have those apps updated now where you can go directly live on YouTube or Facebook just straight through your phone without, some big presentation or whatever the case is. I have friends who do that and they get hundreds of people watching every day, every time they go live.
Oh, okay. I hadn't really thought about going live on something like Facebook or YouTube, but it might be something to think about.
Especially, you said it's been a long time since you've done any live shows or whatever, and you have live commentary and people are able to hang out with you while you're playing or while you're working on music, and it just adds a whole nother aspect to it.
Well, actually, a lot of my albums, the Advent albums we were talking about earlier, those are all live performances from when I was a DJ on the internet a while ago. So I would play these live performances over the net.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
Just all improvising off the top of my head, no rehearsal or whatever. And so yeah, the Advent albums are the way. A lot of the Desert Nocturnes series is that way. Not all of those, but a lot of them.
And those are some longer songs when you would do that? Was this like one long song, or did you break them up?
No, they'd be just one long song. I'd play for maybe 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It would just be one track. But I haven't played like that for a while because I haven't been a DJ since 2016. Like the middle, because my heart just wasn't in doing the podcast anymore, and I didn't want to be one of these people who just did it out of obligation.
I hope that's not me.
Oh no, I know, and I wasn't, saying.
I know, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and your music is beautiful, especially the one that really landed this interview that we're doing is the one with Nancy Rynes. That one right there, that's the first one I listened to, and I'm in love with that, man. So make sure you guys go check out his Bandcamp. He's all over the place, everywhere that music is sold, and YouTube and all that stuff. But definitely check out Soul Journey, inspired by Nancy Rynes, her story that had her on the podcast. So yeah, have you had a chance to talk to her?
We've sent a couple of messages back and forth on Facebook. I follow her page on that platform, so we've talked a little bit, but not very much because she's pretty busy, and I think she's working on a new book.
Yeah. Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Is there any certain like television shows that you would watch or listen to that covered NDEs and stuff like that? Because there's a lot of spiritual shows out there that really specialize in, or even podcasts that would make you, that you're able to find, these type of stories or whatever. Nancy Rynes and so many other ones. There's some Christian ones out there. There's one called It's Supernatural with Sid Roth, and there's always stories of people having near-death experiences and angels and all this kind of stuff showing up. Is there any shows or podcasts or anything that kind of inspires that you're really into?
Yeah, there's some other podcasts that focus on those topics. One of them is We Don't Die Radio with Sandra Champlain. That's a good podcast. There's some, I can't remember the rest of them because I'm not right at my computer, but there are a lot of different podcasts on iTunes that you can get to that cover those kinds of topics.
Any Coast to Coast AM? You into that at all? Maybe
That's
old
still
school
on? I thought
stuff.
that was over. That's old, isn't it?
It's still going.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Just a different dude hosting it now because Art Bell's gone.
Yeah. There's a new host.
He's changed his cosmic address.
Yeah. Someone says I get messages. I forget who told me that, but somebody's like, Art Bell followed you on Facebook, or Art Bell followed you or somewhere, or tweeted you stuff, and I'm like, really? Show me. I didn't know he did. Like, I really want to know. But yeah, no, he's a legend, man. But even George Norrie, who's the host now, but there's still some good stories on there, especially when it comes to you know what I'm saying, the paranormal, supernatural, all that kind of stuff. So you get into to aliens and UFOs in it at all? Because I know you're really intrigued by space. What about the aliens and UFO stuff?
I'm not really into that so much, although but it doesn't make sense to me that we're the only intelligent life form out there. So I would think in this vast universe there's got to be more than just us. But in terms of alien visitations and UFOs and all that, I really haven't been interested in a whole lot of that.
For sure, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate this interview, man. I enjoyed it, and you take care, and let me know when you put out something new, man. We'll be glad to share it out.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
All right, Scott. Thanks again, brother.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, later. Scott Lawlor, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff. Soul Journey, inspired by the near-death experience of Nancy Rynes. And so I had Nancy on the show a month ago or so, maybe a little bit more now. But I had her on the show, and he is part of her email list. She sent out the email of the interview. He watched it, and he just has an album inspired by her work, and he's like, hit me up, wanted to come on the show and talk about it. I checked out his music. It's beautiful stuff. I love it. That one I played, the religious one, someone said it just sounds crazy, the frequency. Well, maybe that's the idea. Like if you have an idea of confusion, right? I mean, that whole religious extremism and bombs over Baghdad and all this stuff is confusion. So you would think that if you're doing an album inspired by that, it would sound dark and heavy and nasty and mechanical even, So, but listening to more of his other stuff is like, I'm saying, real beautiful. He says light ambience and dark ambience. So there's a difference there. You can definitely feel it. We're talking about the 432 frequency. You can feel the difference of a light ambience and a dark ambience. And if you guys haven't tried that, man, definitely try it out. Listen to your favorite song, or maybe listen to a depressing song, a song that when you hear it, it makes you feel bad. Listen to it in the 432 frequency, and it makes you feel a certain type of way. Even though they're speaking about depressing lyrics, it's something about the music with that uplifting vibration that it holds to it. It's really cool. That is kind of weird, though, because I know we all had that preconceived notion, and even like I'm reading here in the chat where people thought and would think that, if you can't see, then you can hear better. And we've all thought that. He said no. Because I know even for me, music sounds different at night. for me, music sounds different at night when we're taking a road trip or driving in the car. It feels like I'm in tune with the different frequencies, where I'm able to hear more because there's less sunlight coming in or something. I really feel that way. Like music sounds so different at night to me. But maybe it, and here's the thing for him, maybe it does. He just doesn't have a comparison. Like he said, oh yeah, he doesn't know what music sounds like to you. And that's the whole thing with spiritual gifts and spiritual identities, is that, and it becomes hard to find out that you can even move in those areas because it's second nature. It's second nature. You don't look at it as spiritual, or I'm good at this and you're not. I'm a prodigy or whatever, because it just comes second nature. A lot of times when we're talking about spiritual giftings and abilities, that stuff comes through by the use of your imagination. You've had your imagination since you were born, and you're picking up frequencies and having thoughts and then entertaining weird ideas. And that's how spirit speaks. That's how you pick up on that stuff, is through the imagination. God speaks through the imagination. So it's second nature. We talking about these ideas that I'm entertaining every day are inspired by the divine. I thought it was just my mind wandering. That's what it feels like until you step out and you start speaking that stuff out, or writing it down, or asking someone, hey, did you have a son named so-and-so or whatever? Then you're like, wow, hey, there's something to this. Then you start stepping out further and further. That's how that stuff works. I mean, we talk about speaking in tongues. Like there was this lady years ago at a prayer meeting we used to attend. It was a little Chinese lady, and so cute. Her name was Maria, and she people would be speaking in tongues, and she could interpret them. She already knew the interpretation. Like when they would speak it, like it was being communicated with her what they were saying in English. And she just assumed and it was just through conversation. She was talking about what so-and-so said in tongues. And we're like, we didn't hear that. She's like, oh, she told us she has the interpretation. She didn't even know that was a thing, the interpretation of tongues. She just knew people spoke in tongues, and she knew what they were saying. And she assumed that everybody did, because it was second nature. They spoke it. She heard it a different way. She thought everybody could. And that's one thing about it. You have to step out in faith and ask, and kind of maybe put your ego aside, your flesh aside, and ask somebody an embarrassing question. Is there anybody here with a neck pain? Is there anybody in this room that has splitting migraines? You're plagued by migraines. Like, you have to step out to do that. It's like, what do you want to know? Like, why? That's weird. Especially if you're in a room of people and they're like, no, that's weird. Who's this weird guy asking if people have migraines? Is he trying to sell something? Is he a weirdo? What's up? But usually you have to step out. And then that's when you step out in faith, you see a miracle happen. You see something change. You see breakthrough. You ask someone, do they need prayer? And then you pray for them and they get healed. Well, you're such an introvert, you ain't fixing to ask nobody for nothing. You despise human contact. But God is working on your heart when you go to Walmart and say, hey, that person is dealing with domestic violence and domestic abuse. I need you to tell her that I still love her. No, I'm not telling her that. I'm not telling her that. You just, that fear of rejection, the anxiety sits in. But you have these ideas. You want to be a miracle worker. You want to do great and mighty things for God. But if you don't step out and just tell this person, you can't tell that person I love them. Like, we should be doing that by default, really. Hey, God loves you. God loves you. I know those people. They love to have those conversations with strangers. I get intimidated too at times. It's easier for me to sit here and do this, or to speak from a stage somewhere, versus that one-on-one random stranger conversation. But that's where you see the miracles working. Anybody can do it when you get a microphone, when you're on stage. Just when you come off the stage, that's where the real ministry takes place. Not everybody can do that. Second nature. And I'm telling you, all the spiritual gifts, we're looking for some really crazy breakthrough and some divine. We're looking for the clouds to part. Hey, tell them that I'm coming soon, or something crazy. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. It works with you having a vision in your imagination of the sky parting and a voice coming through, or seeing God, and you have to translate that, articulate it, and share it. Your vision, your dream. That's how it works. It's all second nature. And it's one thing at a time. Building your faith, because once you step out in the little things, hey, God loves you. Really? And they just murmur under their voice or say, no, he don't. There's no such thing as God. Or nobody could love me. Why? What'd you do? Why are you unlovable? Some people say, okay, thank you. And they just walk on. Okay, whatever. Who knows what that does for them? Maybe they sit in their car and they think about it. Like, where they're poised there. That happens a lot too. A lot of people look at you crazy because they don't want to make a scene. They don't want to feel, oh my God, you know about the things that I was doing when I didn't think nobody saw me, but you know about these things. It's weird when you come into contact with someone like that. You want to deny it. I wasn't doing such things. No. Sometimes you get called out. No, that wasn't me. That was another person. Whatever it is, but you find that when you have when you have an encounter like that and people respond, it builds your faith. When you pray for somebody and they get healed, when you pray for someone and demons come out of them. I knew people who were casting out demons in freaking Olive Garden, like in random people. Like, demons would manifest just because they were walking in such a level of holiness that the darkness couldn't comprehend it. Couldn't be around them. But they were going to go eat at Olive Garden. And they had encounter there. And then you start growing from one level of faith, from glory to glory, one level to the next, and being trusted with greater things. Again, the financial levels we always talk about. If God can't trust you with $50, he's not going to trust you with $5,000, $50,000. So, Renita says, someone asked in the Discord, have we had any supernatural events lately? I couldn't respond at the moment, but the answer is yes. Every day is supernatural. It's just that we expect the spectacular. Every moment is sacred. All life is sacred. Focusing on your breathing, prayer, just showing up. It's as spiritual as you make it. Or it's as dull and monotonous as you make it as well. It's up to you. You decide. I enjoyed this conversation. Again, I didn't know that he was blind whenever we started this. Does it change anything? I don't want to offend anyone with we know a lot of disabled people, and my wife works with disabled children for her living. It's what she does. And it doesn't change anything, but it just makes you more conscious of the conversation. I mean, I wouldn't want to offend anyone on the show, whether you have a sexual preference or a spiritual belief. Like, I wouldn't want to be on here rambling and just mocking your belief or speaking, but you just speak to him like a regular person. Try to articulate it in such a way where you can explain it and get the points across. So it was interesting. Really enjoyed it though. He's a really cool guy, and I'm telling you, the music is good. Go there if you're looking for meditation music. You can just go to his Bandcamp. It's all there. With that, I'm gonna say peace and shalom. Love each and every one of you guys, and we will do it again. I got a bunch of new stuff that I'm working on. I'm working on an angelic course right now about how to get in touch with your guardian angel, and I'm trying to be obedient as the information comes through, to write it down and then be practical about what I do to connect, what I do to commune, and putting it out as a course. Also, we have our Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is tonight. We're going to be doing a hangout, roundtable discussion, having fun with the community through video chat. If you want to do that, the link is in the description as well. Come to our Discord, that's community, where we just do life. And then every Sunday, we've already started the Sunday morning steer class, where we're just going to do breath work, holotropic breathing, guided meditation, and really just going into the ethers together. We talk about it, we give instructions, we interview people, but this is something, an online class where we get to go in together. And I'm looking forward to it. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. I love y'all. If y'all want to hang out with me, jump into Discord. Let's hang out. Let's talk about it. Peace, peace.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.